Sorry about that. I was having technical difficulties while setting up the live stream. Other than that, hey everyone, welcome to my live stream. Tonight's session is all about improving your cross-hatching. If your manga lines look sketchy or messy, it's not because you lack talent. It's probably because you're using your wrist instead of your shoulder and your shoulder aren't familiar with this technique. In this 1 hour masterclass, we'll go from shaky beginner lines to crisp publication ready manga inking. First, first we'll adjust your software settings by setting stabilization to at least 25 to 35% and enabling the pin pressure with the pressure icon. So, other than that, let's get started. Okay, so for okay, so before we begin on working on cross-hatching, we will first review its definition and the step-by-step process for executing it effectively. Okay, so what is cross-hatching? Cross-hatching is a shading technique that involves using sets of parallel lines that intersect each other. Here are the parallel lines. Parallel lines are used as a foundation overlaid with another set of parallel lines at a different angle. So when you create these parallel lines, make sure you use different brush sizes. That way they blend very well amongst your drawings. Next, we are in the multiple layers. Shading and tonal values are beautifully crafted through the use of multiple layers, adding depth and richness to the artwork, which you will actually see later on throughout the session. Now, and then there's the varying layers. Varying layers adjust the spacing, thickness, and direction of lines to create different tonal values and effects. As you can see here from this example, it is used by different brush sizes of the lines. Let's move on to the next one, the tone scale. Now, the tone scale refers to the lightness or darkness of a color in tonal drawings or paintings. The picture space is created using a range of lighter or darker shades of a single color. As you can see here from this regular tone scale, in the beginning it has its darkest color, and towards the end it has its brightest color. Now, let's incorporate this same method on the crosshatching. Here we have its darkest value on crosshatching. And as you can clearly see, it gradually goes to its lightest value with less lines, with more or less the thin lines. Now, here's the shading examples. Make sure you identify your light source before you get started with cross hatching. As you can see, the light source is pointing in this direction. So the shadow or cross hatching shadow will be in this direction. As you can see for the second one, then the third one, and then the fourth one. And notice, even though you're shading in this direction, the shadow is pointed in opposite directions as well. So keep that in mind when you start shading. Then here's the demonstration. As you can see, the first set of lines, the second set of lines, there's the third set. All these are used by using a different set of lines from its thin line to the thickest lines. As you can see from the fourth, as you can see with the fourth example. Now let me close these real quick. Okay, So in this section, we're now in the category of the do's and don'ts. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I did this in my previous live stream when it comes to line art, where I tell you the do's and don'ts when it comes to illustrating your work. So we're going to start with this bad example. We'll bring up the text. Now, what are the don'ts? Don't use straight lines or curved objects on curved objects, excuse me. The biggest cross-hatching trap is treating a round object like a flat wall. The spear, the left spear uses straight, stiff, vertical, and horizontal strokes. This completely fights against the circular shape and flattens your drawing's form. So as you see right here, it doesn't have any depth, and, and the lines didn't even change size. It just looks off. You don't want that in your drawings. Don't maintain an identical uniform gap. Notice how the cross-hatched lines are perfectly spaced, uniform, all the way to the edge. This mechanical grid looks like graph paper laid on top of a circle, rather than smooth shading hugging a 3D object. So when you start cross-hatching, make sure it's wrapped around the object. And you're going to see what I'm talking about later on. Now, don't hard stop your shading bands. The hatch lines terminate abruptly in a uniform, blocky edge right in the middle of the spear. This creates a distracting, hard graphic shape instead of a smooth, believable gradient from dark to light. So now I showed you the bad example, and I showed you something on what you should never do. Now let's get to the good example. Now let's get to the do's. Now wrap around. Now the first one, wrap your lines around the form. Look closely at the right spear. Every single hatching mark is curved, functioning like a cross contour line. Strokes suddenly bend along the spear's surface, which instantly convinces the viewer's brain that the object is three-dimensional and volumetric. Now the second do, taper and vary line density. Now notice how the lines are densely packed, thicker and deeply layered in the core shadow area, but become thinner, lighter, and spread further apart as they move toward the highlight. This line weight hierarchy perfectly mimics the light wrapping around the ball. And of course, the last one, the third do, use feathered and broken strokes, mid-tones. Instead of a harsh borders, the right side uses light, quick feathered strokes that gently fade out into the white space, adding a tiny patch of reflective light, shading on the opposite rim, and a subtle patch near the top highlight adds into the depth. So as you can see here with this perfect spear I drew, in the cross hatching I did, the lines are wrapping around the spear. It doesn't just look like a grid. And I use different sizes of the lines, the thin lines and the thick lines. Just make sure when you do your cross hatching that the lines are wrapped around the object or the figure, which you will see later on throughout the session. All right, now that we've broken down exactly why the flat line crushes your drawing's depth, versus how variable lines make it pop. I want to make sure you have this down. If you have any questions about this specific breakdown, drop them in the live chat now, and I'll clear them up before we jump into the live. Oh, excuse me. Into the live cross-hatching demonstration. If you're watching the replay or the pre-recording later, drop your questions down in the comment section. I monitor those regularly, and reply to as many as I can. Let me know if something isn't clicking. Otherwise, let's load up our next workspace. Questions, drop them in the chat, comments. Okay, so for tonight's demonstration, if you've seen my previous live stream, I've used I've used these two characters in particular for my example for perfect line, which I highly recommend you go check out after the stream is over, of course. And there will be they this, including the spear, will be good examples of what I mean by utilizing crosshatching. So for the basics, we're gonna start with the spear. Okay, so before we start cross hatching, first off, I just want to say if you're finding value throughout this live stream, make sure you leave a like. Make sure you leave a like. It not only helps the channel grow, it also pushes it into the algorithm. As well as if you want more value, more how to drawing lessons, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I live stream 2 times a week. Now, before we start cross hatching, if you want it to look smooth and clean, first place a silhouette on top of the line art, and then create a new layer above it and apply a clipping mask. So that when you cross hatch, you won't draw outside the lines. And I'm about to show you what I mean right now. With the selection tool, select, modify, expand. I usually expand by 2 pixels. Create a new layer. Create a new layer above the sphere, or below the sphere, excuse me. Sorry about that. I've hit inverse when you select outside of the object. Then hit alt backspace to select your color. And I know it doesn't look like it right now, but let me close this background. I basically filled this color in because this is going to be very important for what I'm about to do next. Let me name this. Good. I'll go to new layer above the sphere. Here, Right click, go to create clipping mask. Now watch what I do here. That was embarrassing. See? That way when you crosshatch, you won't draw outside the lines. It's a very useful tool for when you do your illustrations, paintings, backgrounds. This is a very useful tool to have. Now let's identify our light source. We're going to start the base of the shading with a solid black color. Go grab my custom brush. Now I'm going to get started. We're going to use thicker lines. All right, as you can see from this example with the spear, I not only add a solid black color as the first base, then I gradually added lines from the thickest to the smallest lines, and I created this three-dimensional cross hatching. I created this three-dimensional illustration by utilizing smaller lines and big ones, and then I identified the light source. Now I'm going to move on to now I'm going to move on to the characters. I'm going to go straight into the shading since we identified our light source. All right. As you can see, I followed the principles of cross hatching. I did. I added my first line of shading with a large black shade. Then I add the thick lines and small lines all over the face, underneath the eyes, the nose, and then of course the chin. And of course the chin. And of course underneath, as you can see right here. Hi there, just passing by because the thing behind is okay, but the examples construction is better, especially the thunder. I don't understand the light. Like, okay, well, I said because I don't understand. Oh, okay. Well, what don't you understand then? You said the examples. Like, which examples do you think should be better? You think I should do this a little bit more challenging or complex? Let me know. Until then, I'm going to move on to the next example. Hmm. That's right. Give me a second while I load while I load the last example. So you think I should get like a better light source? Okay, there we go. Now we're going to move on to the last example. Will be a little bit more challenging. Now I'm going to do it on on a character, on a half full body figure of one of my characters in my comic series. Um, oh, okay. Oh, okay. I understand. Okay, I understand. Okay, I'll go check them out. Rich Manga Radiant. Okay, okay, I'm gonna go check. I'll check them out after the stream. I don't think I do. Like that's the first time I heard of this thing. By the way, how's your day been? Or how's your night been? Because it's actually pretty dark over here. By the way, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I will be happy to answer them while I wrap this up. If you have any questions for me, let me know. This live stream will end soon. Okay, that's all for. Okay, these are all the demonstrations for this live stream. Hopefully, y'all enjoy. And for tonight's homework, I want y'all to look up On one shot to practice the cross-hatching method I've shown throughout this live stream, look up a photo that you would like to illustrate and incorporate the cross-hatching principles on your set illustrations. But other than that, hopefully you enjoy this stream. You got some value from it. If you enjoy, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you're new. I live stream. I live stream how to draw sessions 2 times a week. If you want to check, you want to check out, you want to check out my comic. The link is down in the description box below, as well as grab a copy of your How to Draw ebook on the artist's origins. As well as if you want to be a long-time supporter, make sure you support through Patreon. With that being said, this is King Dusty Creations signing out. God bless. Stay safe. Have a good night.